This is Mighty CS Man, and I teach a complete curriculum on Java programming using the Building Java Programs book and the accompanying Practice It website. Please see my week 1 orientation for how to get set up on Practice It. So today we're looking at exercise 5.12. Chapter 5 is about indefinite loops, and in this case we've got a particular type of indefinite loop. Let's take a look and see what the spec says. So we're going to write a method named printAverage that accepts a scanner. Okay, so this is really key. We're going to go and revisit this, but it accepts a scanner. Okay, and that's the parameter, and then prompts the user for numbers. Okay, so it says type a number, type a number, type a number. Once any number less than 0 is typed, the average of all non-negative numbers is displayed. The average, display the average double, do not round it. Okay, so whenever I give students my problems, I want them to think about where are you, what's your start, okay, of the problem, what information you've given, where are you going, and then what tools do you have available to use to solve the problem. So in this case, we know for the overall problem that we're actually given a scanner, okay? A lot of students go in here and they always create their own scanner equals new scanner system.in. This is wrong, okay? Don't do that. Use the past in scanner instead. I'm actually going to leave this here just to show you what the problem is, okay? But this is what we call a test harness, okay? Practice It is going to pass in a scanner with specific information in it. And if you create your own scanner and system in, it's not going to work, okay? But we'll come back to this. But that's where we're starting. And where we need to go is this. Obviously, it's a loop, getting a number, okay? So we have to think about what tools do we know on how to solve this problem. Chapter 5 is all about indefinite loops, and in particular, there are two types of loops available. One is a fence post, and the other is a sentinel loop. A fence post is when we have 1 and 2 and 3, and we have n elements and n-1 separators. That is not the case here. Okay, we're not printing a list. We're not processing a list, and we have n and n-1 items. The other alternative is the sentinel loop, where a sentinel loop is we're repeatedly executing some process, oftentimes asking the user, until we hit a specific value. That is what we're looking for here. So let's start putting some pseudocode here. I'm not going to give you the full solution, I'll warn you, but it'll give you enough to get started. So we know that we've got a sentinel loop. And what is the sentinel value? Sentinel value is anything less than 0, right? So whenever you think about a sentinel loop, you have to figure out what is the sentinel value, and you know this sentinel value is going to be inside a while loop, okay? We know that we've got a while loop here. And in general, only in general, the form of a sentinel loop will look like this. Do something while something, okay? Here, you have to check your sentinel check. Now, I also want to look at this last part here. So we have to compute the average, right? I'm just going to say print the average. And we can do that by having a count of items and a sum, right? We take the sum, we divide it by the count. That'll give us a double, as long as we remember to use double math, okay? So we'll come back to doing that in a second. So let's take a look at the overall problem now. So what we were given was the scanner console, which I screwed up here. Then what we're trying to do is generate this loop of getting numbers. Okay, that's going to be in here. And then we're going to have to print the average out here. So let's take a closer look at what's in the sentinel loop. Okay, so obviously we have to do prompt, and then we have to get a number, right? So this is not the hard part, so I'll go ahead and give this to you, system.out.println. Actually, I don't want to do a lin so that I can get the input on the same line. If I did a println, it would just put the user's response on the next line. In fact, here, I'll go ahead and do that just to show you what the difference is. And then the getting a number, okay, involves the scanner, okay. Some students make the mistake of putting the scanner here, which would involve redefining the scanner every single time. You definitely don't want to do that. Okay, so I've already declared one out here, which is wrong, but let's just go and try using it. So we'll do a int num equals console dot, and then next we want an int. Okay, so that's going to get, okay. So what this loop is going to do now is it's going to print type a number, it's going to get the input, and then we have to give it a while here, okay? So what is the sentinel check? The sentinel value is less than 0, okay? So I can put something in here that checks that while num is, so we actually have to check the opposite thing. So while num is greater than or equal to 0, okay? It's going to do that. So let's just run this. I encourage my students to always just play, okay? Just play with it. See what happens, okay? All right, so we've got variable console already defined. All right, so here, just so I can continue on the farce here, I'm going to change this to be a C. No, actually, I don't want to do that because let's call it console 2, okay? Console 2. Let's try solving that part first, okay? And then variable num. Okay, so what's the problem here? Num is actually out of scope here. Okay, this is a very common problem. Very simple solution. All you have to do is you have to bring num outside so that this check here is outside of this scope. Okay, there probably should be a structure that allows you to do it within all the same scope, but there isn't, so you got to declare it out there. All right, I just wanted to. Oh yeah, it's probably gonna not be very happy with us because I'll stop for a second. Okay, it took a very long time to time out, but it finally did. So let's see what the problem was. It's a timeout. So, I was hoping it would actually show you yeah, okay, it is showing you. These are the numbers. This is the actual string that is being passed in to the scanner right here, okay? This scanner, when you declare new scanner, you can actually declare it on a string. Here, I can even do this. You'll find this, maybe not, but you'll find this amusing possibly. I'm going to replace this system in with this string. This is what practice it is actually doing. Let's try running this again. Okay, so here it actually did get the 4 numbers. I forgot to actually print it here. Let's do that again. Type a number, and then it got the number. You know, we're starting to get off the beaten track, but that is actually what practice it is doing. Okay, practice it is passing. It's calling printAverage with a new scanner. This is exactly what printAverage is being called with. Okay, so when you are told to take a scanner, you really need to take the scanner. Okay, because if you don't, it's not going to work because there's nothing going into the system in. Okay, so system in is the wrong thing to do. It's just going to sit there and time out forever. If you get a timeout, it's probably because you're not accepting the scanner. So I'm going to delete that, and we're going to go back to using console. Okay, so now let's try running it. All right. So remember when I said I was going to use print instead of println? This is what happens if you use a println. Okay, it just puts an extra character return in there. So let's fix that. All right, so now this is starting to look a lot better, right? This is exactly identical to this, okay? So we've actually got a loop, all right? Now let's work on printing the average. We're not done here, by the way. There's still a very important bug that I haven't told you about. And in order to reveal that bug, I'm going to do a little more work for you. I'm going to throw in a sum. Let's set it to equal to 0 to start. And we're going to add it to the sum. And then at the end here, I'm going to, let's say, so the sum divided by 2 equals, okay, so obviously this is the wrong calculation for you. And I'm going to do some, let's just do that. All right, so if I add 7 and 4, that's 11, and 16, that's 27, and then I don't want this last number, okay? Should be 27 divided by 2, should be 13 and a half, okay? So that's not what is coming out here. Obviously, what it should have done is it should have added 7, 4, 11, 27 divided by 3 is 9, okay? So that's what the problem is asking for. I'm giving you the sum, okay? So there are two problems here. One is that it's giving us 11, whereas it wanted a floating point, okay? And the other is it adding the right number? So first, let's fix the floating point. This is an important point. And remember that whenever you have integers, it's going to do integer math, okay? So how can I convert this to be floating point math? So there are a couple different solutions. Let's try this. I'm just going to convert that to 2.0. Remember, if you think back to our expressions work, I think in chapter 2, whenever something comes in floating point, as soon as it hits that point in the expression evaluation process, it'll convert everything to a floating point. So as soon as it gets, this is going to be an integer, but as soon as it gets to here, it's going to convert this to a floating point number, and it should give us the floating point number. Okay, so when you're doing your work, make sure that you actually convert it to a floating point, not an integer. Okay, but here's the other problem. So we figured out this is the sum of this is 27. So why isn't it 13 and a half? Well, it's because it subtracted 4 off the 27, giving 23. Okay, that's why I came up with 11 and a half. If you watched my video on dice sum, which I believe was exercise 5.7, dice sum, I talked about how, in this case, you could just do a do-while loop. But not always is do-while going to work. In particular, if you have a case where you need to throw the last value away before processing it, then you need to do something different. And here we have that exact case. So what's happening now is we're always adding this to the sum, okay? And that is not working for us in this case because we want to throw that last value away. So go watch my video on dice sum 5.7, okay? And I go over the solution, okay? The solution is to use the same solution that we do for fence post problems, which is we have to do a loop and a half. And to do the loop and a half, you're going to have to reverse the order of the functions in the loop here. So instead of prompting and then getting the number and adding it, you're actually going to add the number first and then prompt for the next number, okay? But outside that loop, so that's the full loop, you need to do a half. Here, I'll go ahead and say, you need to do the half loop of get the first number, okay? And then this will be the whole loop. So reversed order of, you're going to add, then get next number, okay? So by doing this, what you're going to do is you're going to get that first number, which in this case is going to be 7. Okay, it's going to get the 7, and then it's going to check first to see is that number greater than or equal to 0. If the first number is less than 0, it's going to never do the loop at all. Okay. So actually, I'm not sure if I said after we get the number here, we're not going to add it to the sum yet. Okay. We're just going to have the number. Then we're going to test if the number is greater than or equal to 0. So if it is greater, then we can add this sum. That's going to be the first thing we do. We've got to reverse the order. We're going to move that sum up there. Okay. Then you can prompt for the next number. Okay. So eventually we get through the 7, the 4, the 6. What was it? 7, 4. We get through the 16. The fourth number is going to be a -4. And at that point, the while check will fail, and we will never add that -4 to the sum. Okay. All right, so this is as far as I'm going to take the problem. So you've got to correct a bunch of things here. You've got to do the loop and a half solution for the sentinel loop, and I've already said up here it's a sentinel loop. And you've got to fix this to be the right calculation. Be careful about making sure that you do a double calculation and not an integer calculation. And let's just review, what did we learn here? So printAverage was an interesting combination of sentinel loops and the loop and a half solution. So I've talked several times about how do you identify sentinel loops. It's some process we're doing over and over and over again until we hit the right value. And then how do you identify whether you need a loop and a half? So this compared to 5.7 shows you how do you know whether you need the loop and a half. You need the loop and a half if you want to discard the last value. Okay, you don't want to process the last value. That's when you need the loop and a half. Okay, so this is why I chose to include this problem here. There's one last note that I wanted to give you, and that is if you look at the program definition, it says once any number less than 0 is typed, the average is displayed. So what that means is, what happens if the first number was -4? Okay, so if the first number is -4, we should get that -4. Then the while loop turned upside down is going to check whether the number is greater than or equal to 0. It's going to fail. It's never going to go through any of this. And then we don't want to print the average. Okay, so you're going to have to put a check in here testing whether or not the sum is whether the first number is negative or not, or the sum is negative or not. So that means you're also going to have to make sure your sum is properly initialized. So I hope you found this problem useful. If you did, then please like and subscribe. I do have a complete curriculum on the Building Java Programs book and the Practice It.